tell me your first name and last name.
Yeah, so my name is John Hughson. I'm the CEO for Frio Regional Hospital, and been here about 14 months now. I have served my entire administrative career in rural Texas. Communities about this size, some a little bit smaller, but mostly about the size of Pearsall. And it's where I enjoy working and where I sought out my career objectives. So.
Great. Thank you. So our first question will be, where were you during 9/11 and how did that impact the job? Or did that happen at any time?
So where was I? I remember it, there's a couple of things. I remember when the Challenger exploded. I was in 5th grade at Lamar School, walking into school, and I heard about it there. And I distinctly remember 9/11. I was getting ready to go to class. I was going to school in Huntsville, Texas at Sam Houston. Getting ready to go to class. Always had the news on before I'd go to class, and I saw at that time when I turned the news on, it was what appeared to be an accident, and there was an explosion or there was an impact with the building, but not very sure what happened. And then as I was watching the news, I remember seeing the second plane fly into the second tower. And at the time, I thought that was really unusual, but I still don't know that I thought that it was intentional or malicious or a terrorist attack. And I think that's us as Americans have always felt very safe on our sovereign soil, and thanks to the military, thanks to our National Guard, police, and I think that's a security blanket that we took for granted for a very long time, and that really caught us by surprise. And so, again, I think that's why I didn't think much of it. But immediately it had an impact on me because my sister was in Manhattan at the time working, and I remember trying to get in touch with her. Cellular phone wasn't working, I guess because they were inundated with phone calls. And at the time I didn't really use any kind of messaging service over the internet or things like that. And I think it was probably really before smartphones, and so we didn't have some of those same solutions that we have today. So communication was very difficult and really concerning for me. But I distinctly remember it today. And how does it impact our job? A lot of things changed after that. There was, this was back before I was even in hospital administration. So I don't know what was in place prior to me becoming a hospital administrator, but emergency operation plans, anticipating needs when there's mass casualties, when there's a surge on supplies and things are difficult to come by, when modes of transportation are impacted. We depend a lot on our local first responders and EMS to transfer patients out. In instances where that's not possible, we have to find solutions to take care of those that are injured and hurt in our facility. So we now have emergency management coordinators, we have safety officers, we have emergency operation planning. We work in regions like we're in Region 8, which is STRAC, the Regional Advisory Council. And that is the South Texas Regional Advisory Council. It's based in San Antonio. They're a top-rate organization, but there's a lot of planning and coordination there, communication, logistics, media. So all of the touch points are identified in that kind of a situational type scenario. I've actually used that a couple of times now in my administrative career since 9/11, but when I was in Brenham, we had very, very significant flooding, and essentially all routes to Brenham were closed off or flooded, and we had no access to what we called the outside world at that point. We were essentially an island, literally and figuratively, but we had no ability to get support in, and we couldn't get them out, and so we were self-contained for a while, and so we relied very heavily on our emergency operation plan at that point, and we were able to move patients around in the hospital and just to take care of them and essentially ride out the storm. So I think from my perspective of how it has impacted the job, it's always caused us to be anticipating what you don't expect. And it's certainly been a factor with the coronavirus pandemic and our emergency operations plan. STRAC has been activated, and it allows us to coordinate our resources that are otherwise limited and make the most effective use out of them. And so I think that's probably if there was one summary, that might be it.
Okay, thank you. Our second question is, why is it important to remember 9/11?
I think during that kind of crisis, it's humbling, and it makes you feel proud to be an American and part of a group that's much bigger than you. And the selfless acts of kindness and courage and bravery that we saw, not only from first responders, but from regular people like you and I, and helping out your fellow man. At that time, there's no rich, there's no poor, there's no haves and have-nots. We're one. And I think it brought a lot of unity, and some of which I think is sorely needed right now, and with some of the conflicts that are going on within our own country. But I think it's important for us to remember those that make sacrifices, personal sacrifices, on the behalf of people that they don't know. We talk about police and their protection of the communities that they serve in, our National Guard, our ROTC, our military, our hospital employees that come to work every day in the midst of the coronavirus and intentionally putting themselves in harm's way just to make sure that their fellow man is taken care of. And I think those are some of the most important lessons that we can learn from 9/11 is that there's somebody out there working on your behalf, and you may not know it. And they work behind the curtains, they work behind the scenes. Sometimes they're nameless, sometimes they're faceless. You may not know them, but we've always got people working on your behalf. And so I'll try not to get too political on my vision or my opinion of the military and the importance of that, and ensuring that we have a safe country. But I absolutely think that is imperative as well, that we have to be sure that we are not only prepared to respond to an incident like that, but prevent it from happening again.
Absolutely. And lastly, what made you choose your job as a medical administrator?
So this one's kind of a long story, but I'll shorten it. I was not the typical student. I spent 10 years in undergraduate school, and during those 10 years, my first 2 years in college, I was in Iowa, and then I came back home to Bryan, Texas, is where I'm from. And I spent the next 8 years taking a few classes here and there, and while I was doing that, I was working at the hospital in Bryan, and was working in the lab as a phlebotomist, and made a couple of career progression steps there, and I finally realized that all of my buddies and my friends were graduating and moving and taking good jobs, and I said, well, I guess I need to get this wrapped up. And I said, what can I do? What am I interested in? And so it's really something that I kind of grew into, and I said, I really enjoy taking care of people. I prided myself on being very good at my craft and drawing blood, and starting IVs and doing those things that, were necessary. And I took pride in it, and it gave me joy to help out, my fellow man where nobody wants to get stuck with a needle. Let's make sure it's as painless as possible. Well, we do it the minimum number of times that we have to, and let's take pride in that. So that gave me a lot of joy and satisfaction. And so I knew I needed to. I had bigger goals than to do that, and so I decided that somewhere in there I just decided that I thought this would be a good career and a good fit for me in my personality, my morals, my values, and a way that I could give back to the community that I serve to make sure that anybody that comes to this hospital is given the best possible care that they can, by the best people that they can get, in an environment that is welcoming, friendly, and compassionate for them as individuals. So.
All right, thank you so much. So that will be all for the interview. Once again, thank you for having us for the interview as well, and thank you for being professional about so many people, especially during this crisis.
Absolutely, you're welcome, and I want to thank you for your service in school. I know that's extra time and commitment on your part, and there's probably additional study and PT and all kinds of other things that go with that. So it's a commitment, and that is certainly a badge to wear very proudly. So thank you guys for your support of the schools, and you certainly seem like fine young people. And good luck to you guys in your careers.
All right. Thank you.
All right.